Compressing drums. Here we can see the recorded waveform of a bass drum. We can see the attack, the sudden increase in amplitude. This will be the initial hit, the thump and punch of the bass drum. And we have the decay here as we get a bit of the resonance from the drum itself and perhaps a bit of room noise. It's a very sudden transient. If we zoom in here and look up at the timeline, we can measure the time that it takes for the transient to reach its peak. It's about 10 milliseconds here. We can use a compressor to either emphasize this attack or emphasize the release. We'll do this with a snare drum because it's easier to hear. With this first compressor, we've got the attack set to about 10 milliseconds, so that will let the transient through the compressor before it clamps down and reduces the volume on the decay. We've got a release time of about 100 milliseconds, so the compressor will reset before the next drum hit, and very high compression ratio. This is the waveform here. When I add the compressor onto the waveform, we can see that this transient's let through and then the decay is diminished in amplitude. Now we can do exactly the opposite of this. This second compressor has been set to actually clamp down on the waveform as it is starting and release very quickly after that. It's without the compressor. Now we can see that the compressor is compressing the initial attack but leaving the decay. This signal processor plugin can do the job of either of those compressors. This signal processor divides the transient at the peak. We've set this to about 10 milliseconds, and now we have an individual control over the amount of attack and the amount of sustain that we hear. I'll start with the snare drum and then add attack and reduce the sustain. We could hear the punch and the initial crack of the snare and very little of the ringing on afterwards. We can also go the other way and emphasize the sustain and reduce the attack. We can hear the wash of the decay but not much of the crack. When we're mixing rock drums, we're greedy. We want both the sharp in-your-face attack of the drums being hit, plus we want the depth in the room and the space, the bigness of the drums as well. We'll get the attack out of the close microphones on the bass drum and the snare. We'll get the big spacious sound from the room microphones. They make the drums sound far away. There's still a bit of attack there, but we're getting a lot more of the room noise. To emphasize this room noise, we can put on a compressor with a very fast attack to try and get rid of that attack of the transients, and a fast release, so we're hearing as much of the room noise as possible. As I play, I'll wind up the ratio, and we'll need a bit of make-up gain as well. We're getting quite a powerful distorted sound, but we're getting very little of the attack. It's just the ringing on of all those cymbals, of the overtones of the drums. This will make our drum track sound very large. So let's play the dry drum track, and I'll gradually mix in the compressed room group. That's a lot more than we'd usually have, but you get the idea. So now we've got both punchy drums plus large spacious drums.